Hello and welcome to episode 6 of the Data Leadership Podcast. Today I'm joined by Andy Bell. He's VP of Global Product Data Management across Precisely, a business that deals with location data and a third-party provider. The topic we're going to speak about today is around key considerations when actually integrating data within your organization, and especially as a leader. I've been in touch with Andy for a little over a year now, and we've been hoping to do this type of thing. His passion and his knowledge around data is brilliant, so I wanted to get him on the podcast. So I think let's go and start with just a bit of an introduction about yourself, Andy, and how you got into data, that sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely, Rich, and thanks ever so much for inviting me to do this. So, yeah, I am the VP of Global Data Product Management at Precisely. And Precisely is a company that is all around data integrity. We're a relatively new business in terms of Precisely. However, we're a combination of a merger between two organizations, SyncSort, and the software and data component of Precisely of Pitney Bowes, which had a history as MapInfo and Group One. And we're all around delivering data integrity for our clients, around being able to move data from legacy to new cloud systems, being able to validate, clean and manage that data, and our specialism around location context and around data enrichment. And that's the part that I look after. I look after a global portfolio of data, which has a location characteristic. So it's things like streets, points of interest, boundaries, demographics. And we supply that to a whole range of clients, customers around the world, doing a whole variety of different use cases across multiple verticals. And I've been here about 8 years. My interest in data started back in the early 90s when I worked for a company called GMAP, a company out of Leeds University that specialized in retail location analytics. And we built all sorts of clever models to analyze retail locations. But the thing that really caught me was how important the data was. We built all these very, very clever algorithms, but if the data wasn't any good, whatever we built wasn't any good either. So, and I then pursued a career around, developing data products, using data products, worked with Core Credit and GlaxoSmithKline over the years, and ended up here looking after these a large array of products.
Sure, and that's why you're in a great position to focus around our topic today, which is some of the key considerations of integrating data within an organization. And I think just to demonstrate the point of, I suppose, why that's so apparent and relevant today is we were speaking before the call, and I think it's 76% of decision makers within the world of data are actually looking to put plans in place, looking to consider how they can integrate external data. So there's obviously, before diving into something like that, there's obviously some key considerations. And I think Andy's in a good position to be able to run through a few of those and hopefully explore those a bit further. So, I mean, from your perspective, just before doing that, why do you feel it's important for organizations to maybe consider using external data? What are some of the benefits?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we see kind of like two types of organizations. There's those that generate a huge amount of their own internal data. They know a lot about their customers, they know a lot about their markets, and what they want to do is they want to bring in third-party data that gives them a market context for the customers and the decisions that they're making. So they may have 1 million customers, but the UK alone is 66 million people. That's a lot of people you don't know anything about. So you want to understand and know that market. What's special about your customers? Where can you find more of them, and how you can work with them? But it's also been able to bring in third party, context to the decisions that you're making. So you might look at an insurance company looking at risk, They need to bring in natural hazards around flooding, around wildfires, and those types of things that allows them to understand the exposure and the pricing of insurance policies. So there's a lot of organizations doing that. You then have the other half, and a lot of retailers and manufacturers fall into this area where they know nothing about their customer. They've got revenue from a location, and that's pretty much it. So they're really looking for market information that allows them to understand why do they get the performance, what are the characteristics around areas and around that market that means that they're potentially more successful in one location compared to another. So we're able to bring in that and deliver third-party data that gives them that context to the decision processes.
It's crazy, to be honest. Before looking into this, and I remember when we first spoke about this, I just did not realize how big a thing it was. I didn't realize that there was that link with location and data, and all these companies that specialize purely in that, precisely being one of them. So it's crazy to look into it more. And I think if businesses use it in the right way and take the right measures, then it can be huge, I imagine, for understanding your customer, for building and growing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, location is such an important characteristic to everything that we do. You know, where we live, where we work, the city centres that we like to go to, the leisure, if we could go to any leisure facilities at this point,
exactly.
You know, where would we go? But it's also, you know, that means, you know, what opportunity is there, but it also impacts the kind of decisions that both a business and a consumer will make. We always had a statistic, you know, about 85% of all business data has a location characteristic. You know, you think about every address has a location. So you kind of start from there, and it works inwards. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, before you, if you're a data leader and you're in a position where you're going to start looking at bringing external data in to combine with that internal data that you have, what are some of the key considerations that you need to think about?
Yeah, I mean, we look at this across a number of different aspects. So probably the most important that a lot of will be thinking about is pricing and licensing. You've got to have the right price, you've got to be able to afford the data that you want, but also licensing is absolutely critical. Is it licensed in a way, can you license it in a way that you want to consume it? You know, be it an on-premise deployment, transactional, through APIs, all of those sorts of considerations, but also does it allow you to do the things that you need to be able to do as a business? And those things are really important. However, there's lots of things you've got to think about. That's great, but there's lots of data providers out there, and you've got to take into a whole bunch of other considerations around the data that you're going to access. And kind of like first one aspect of that is around the integrity of the product that you're going to consume. And integrity, we mean, you know, what's the file structure? What are the attributes? What are the nature of those attributes? And what are the files and the data sets that you receive? And now, as a data leader, you kind of go, well, that's obvious. However, it's really important because, you know, to work with a supplier that has a consistency about that, but also around how they help you understand when changes are going to come along. Because, you know, as a fairly, you know, lots of organizations will develop automated routines. They might have an SDK, pull it in from different, and they'll have an expectation about how that data's to look. And if that data changes and it breaks your processes, the resources, the delays in processes, and the impact on your business is really
Can have like extensive. A delayed effect, like a knock-on effect. Yeah.
Absolutely, and as a data leader, knowing what that exposure and understanding how that might change. So, you know, we always give, or try to give our clients, you know, a significant amount of time around if we're going to change a file structure. They've got to look at how they might change their processes, how that might impact further downstream as well in terms of just how they've written that code. So yeah, it's a really important aspect of
you need
ensuring that you're working with an organization that's going to work with you through that kind of process.
Yeah, someone who has the clear processes in place. They've been there, they've done it before. They know the problems that can come up if you don't do those type of things, for sure. Interesting. What sort of other considerations are key?
Yeah, there's a number of others, and the next one that really comes to mind for me is around ease of use. And this is really, when we think around how data is linked together, how easy it is to build into your software, that's really, really important. And we've got, I go back to a deal that we won quite a few years ago. It's probably about 5, 6 years ago with a very large global organization, very well known. And we asked them, well, why did you choose us? And they gave us lots of really nice reasons, but one was kind of intriguing to us, because they go, your data was just easy to use. We opened it up, we could see exactly what we had. One of your competitors, they sent us data and we just didn't understand it. It was so complex and they couldn't answer the questions. And that just makes it really, really difficult. You've got to make it really easy for the organizations consuming the data to be able to do that and be up and running, as quickly as possible.
So they get that value quickly and it's easy to understand.
Yeah. Now, it's not always easy to get that, because a lot of customers will have they will have unique use cases and will need to do some transformation. But the more that you can help them do that, the better. And that a lot of what we're doing right now is looking at the idea of interoperability, which is linking our data together. When you think about a location, being able to say, this address, this is the property on that address, these are the attributes of that property, this is the neighborhood it's in, the postcode, these are the demographics, these are the businesses located at that address. Linking all of those things together is critical for us. And that really hits that ease of use. And those are the types of things you need to be looking at that when considering those third-party suppliers.
Definitely. No, it's a really good point, and it's something that if you sort of just dive into it, could trip you up in the end, because it could be a waste of time, waste of resource, and I'm sure there's plenty of examples of that going on as well.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah. But and there are, that isn't kind of like the end of what you should be thinking around. I think one of the things we're keen on conveying to our clients is around both the coverage and the completeness of the data. So, it seems, some of these things seem obvious to me, but, when you're talking about coverage, let's say you're a UK organization, does the data you provide actually cover the UK, or does it only include cities, or is it only England? Those things you've got to ask those questions and make sure you get the right answers, because certain ways that certain data gets collected means that there may be a limitation on the coverage. But it's ensuring that you've got the coverage that you need to be able to do the analytics that you want to do. But it's also around the completeness. Does it actually have everything you would expect to be in there? And there are some really challenging areas. When we provide like postcodes, because we're a location company, we're about postcodes you can locate and put on put somewhere on the planet. There are postcodes that exist that isn't the case. You look at, say, I think it's HMRC. They have a specific postcode. It's not about the location. It's just about the delivery of that mail. And things like points of interest. Business data, to me, is like the most difficult data that you could ever. It changes rapidly. It's difficult to get that data, and it's understanding how, trying to understand how complete is that data when you're going to receive it. And you've got, when you look at that as a consumer of that data, does it meet ultimately is what that third-party provider is going to deliver in terms of coverage and completeness. Does it meet the needs that you have as a business? So
I think that's I think that's a really key point. It's making sure that you've got the right aim and goals in the first place, so you know what you're trying to achieve with that, as opposed to sort of winging it a little bit, in which case that it might be, again, you're not going to get the most value out of it. And especially if this is quite a costly thing to do, if it, going outside an organization, trying to get more data, you want to get it right. I imagine from a business perspective, they'll want to see return on investment on that. And if some of these things aren't followed, potentially it could be a case of, hang on a minute, next time you're wanting to do that and increase that data, it could be quite difficult.
No, absolutely. And a lot of third-party providers as well will focus on certain use cases, which means that the data set is absolutely fantastic there, but don't think you can then translate it to other use cases. There may be a limitation, and actually having that understanding, that data knowledge as well, is really important for any organization. I think I see this again and again, and we're as bad at it as anybody else. We love focusing on technology and forget about the data. And I'm the data guy, and I have and it's that data literacy within an organization, and I see it again and again. I meet variety of different organizations, and sometimes they absolutely understand the nature of the data, how it's created, what its limitations, and then you'll get into other organizations. And I remember having a conversation again with a very well-known name, and this was a head of their geospatial data, and it was, they really didn't understand the nature of a postcode. And then you might go, well, I know what a postcode is. It's a postcode. And it says, no, it's designed to deliver post. We just so happen as an industry of using it because it also has a location to it, but they're not very perfect locations, and the Royal Mail doesn't really care about where the boundary might be between different postcodes. They're interested in the delivery points. So kind of understanding concepts like that, really, really important for organizations to have that level of literacy.
And how do you feel, is there anything, do you help organizations with that data literacy? Do you help try and put them in the best place to be able to get the most out of this?
Absolutely, yeah. It's a really important part. And that, when you're thinking around who you're going to work with in terms of a data supplier, knowing the kind of support and their capability, their knowledge, really, really important that you investigate that and understand that you're working with an organization that, when you've got a tricky problem, you can ring them up and they'll give you a hand, help you out, work you out how to solve it. And we do this all the time. I think a really good example I had was we do global postcode and admin boundaries. We had a client and he rang us up and he says, I can't load it. And I'm like, okay, what are you doing? And eventually we found out they were using Netezza. Now, Netezza does have a spatial component. However, we do a little bit of digging and we realize, this is getting a bit technical, but their field for storing location information was 255 characters long. And I go, well, that's not going to be able to contain the information you need to just draw the boundary of the UK, let alone anything else. So we were able to help them through about, okay, what we're going to have to do is grid this data, and that will simplify the structure of the information and be able to get you that into your database. But that it took a lot of conversation, a lot of thinking around how, first of all, we had to understand the technology they were using and then understand its limitations, and then understand how can we translate and transform the data that we provide into something that then allow them to use it within the technology they've invested in.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a lot to think about when you're going through this. There's a lot to think about before using external data, for sure. And
yeah. No. I'm sorry. I was going to jump in on there. The kind of another key part of what we do is metadata. So data about the data itself, and this can come around understanding the correctness and the currency of the data that you're receiving. So making sure you're getting good metadata, and this means like, you might get a table. Does it actually have reasonable values in it? So, let's say, you've got some financial value in there, and everything else is kind of like about £100, and suddenly you've got like a record that says £1 million. Is that reasonable? Understanding that, but also around, if you categorize things. So, understanding from your metadata, you might have a field that categorizes something into 5 categories, and it's 1 to 5. Why is there a value of 6 in there? What does that, should that be, need to have that explained, that type of thing. But it's also about understanding the currency, and that means, how old is that data? So, and that is so dependent on what you're consuming. So some things change more often than others. So business data, you would expect that to be regularly updated. It might be daily, weekly, monthly. Other things just don't change that much. Postcodes, yeah, they do change, but it might only need a 6-month or a yearly update to that data. So, but what you should be getting from a supplier is when did they actually create that data? Because that's going to be really important about how that then links into your internal data. So again, I know I keep talking about postcodes, but they do change. If somebody's going to provide you data that was created 3 years ago, you're going to get some mismatches. If you're keeping your data clean and in line with the postcode file, things are not going to match. And you either need to understand that or find somebody who updates it a bit more regularly. So understanding that really, really important about working with those third parties.
It sounds really important to figure out what's best for you as an organisation, your situation, not one size fits all. By the sounds of it.
Yeah. No, it is, and you got to ask questions, and I think what we find is our best relationships are, although it's harder on the pre-sale side of it, is the more questions they ask, the more comfortable we feel that when we deliver this, they're going to be successful. Because that's what you want. You want a customer. We're like anybody else. We're here to make money. We want them to be happy. We want them to renew. All of those sorts of things. So it is in a supplier's best interest to ensure that what you're going to get and what the nuances and the attributes that you're going to receive.
Yeah, it sounds like there's some real key things to think about before diving into this. What's clear is the value can be huge to an organization. I mean, just to sum this up, if you had to give sort of one piece of advice to data leaders that are looking to integrate sort of third-party data, what would that be? Where would they start?
I think what you want to do is really look for a supplier who's going to be your partner. Don't try not to think of it as a transactional thing. It is a relationship. They're going to be providing you, hopefully, ongoing data feeds. You need to build a relationship with that supplier. Make sure you're comfortable with them. Make sure that they're going to give you the support that you need, particularly if something goes wrong. And they're going to be responsive, have answers, and support you for however long you need that product within your business. So really, my key bit is make sure that you build that relationship, because one of the important things I've always found, and maybe this is just a general business thing, is if you build that relationship, you've got that partnership. When you've got a difficult question to ask, it's so much easier, and they're going to be so much more willing to work with you. So really build that relationship up. And make sure you're comfortable with the organisation that you're going to be working with.
That's it, because it's not just here you go, here's that data, like you say, a transaction type thing, and that's it. It is an ongoing communication. It's ongoing help, because as you've spoken about, there can be plenty of things that go wrong. There's almost definitely going to be something that goes wrong, because
no data is perfect. We're not putting rockets up to the moon, and we're not doing brain surgery. There's always going to be questions. That's the nature of data, and kind of what makes it fun, because I'm still a bit of a geek. When you get things you've got to investigate, I quite enjoy it. Sadly, in my role these days, it's mostly financial information rather than actual data. Well, it is still actual data, but it is. It's it's a really engaging topic, definitely.
Yeah, well, it's been really good speaking to you today, Andy. What I'll do is, if it's okay with you, I'll share your profile when I put the episode up. Obviously, anyone has any questions around this, any concerns, or just wants to share their experiences within this, it would be quite interesting to hear, what's worked, what hasn't worked, to hopefully help others as well. But yeah, it's been really good speaking to you today, Andy, and look forward to keeping in touch.
No, thank you very much, Rich. It's been an absolute pleasure.